delighted to have Kaja Kallas, who is the Vice President and High Representative for Foreign and Security Affairs at the European Commission. Of course, she was formerly the Prime Minister of Estonia, and we've had many conversations on our program throughout the Ukraine crisis. And, of course, Ayman Abdullah Al Safadi, the Foreign Minister of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and previously a colleague. Previously a journalist.
You had an easier job. You have an easier job.
A long time ago. So, you know, from two perspectives, I want to ask about the two raging issues in the world right now. The war in Europe, the war in the Middle East, and how we're all affected by it. There was a headline in, I think, the Washington Post or Politico or whatever, suggesting that President Trump's peace plans for both Ukraine and Gaza are without the Ukrainians and without the Palestinians. First and foremost, do you think that is true about his proposal for trying to have peace negotiations with President Putin? Do you think the Ukrainians are guaranteed a solid, position at the table?
Well, any deal for it to work, Ukrainians need to agree to this. That is very clear. And when we look at this whole process, then it's not really sure. They are talking, but what is this deal really? I think right now the most important thing is that the Putin doesn't really want peace. So I think we should put the efforts there that they would want peace.
Can I, just before I turn to you, say, why do you say that? Because President Trump says that they had a very warm and long conversation, that he felt that President Putin did want to go into negotiations. Why do you think that he does not want peace?
Very simple reason. This night, Russia was bombing a nuclear station in Ukraine. So if he wants peace, he could, just simply stop bombing Ukraine. I mean, that is as simple as that, but he's not doing that. So
a similar question to you, Foreign Minister. Obviously, the whole crisis over 15 months, set off by October 7th and the war of avenging, of self-defense by Israel. Again, President Trump has put himself on the line for a ceasefire and has said things, not quite what he's been saying about Ukraine, but has said, for instance, that particularly about Gaza, that we'll have it, it's ours, we'll take care of it, we'll make the Riviera of the Middle East. And furthermore, has insisted, expected your country and Egypt to take some 2 million Palestinians. Your reaction right now, today, after all these days of having to deal with this?
Thank you, Christian. We just came back from the States where His Majesty had a very frank, open discussion with the President. President Trump, bottom line, is saying that he wants to bring about peace to the region, and we say we are partners. We've been working, striving to have that peace for decades. But in order to have that peace, a deal by definition, going back to your question, is a deal that is concluded to the satisfaction of both parties. Our view in Jordan is the only way that you can have just and lasting peace in the region is to end occupation and have a sovereign, independent Palestinian state on Palestinian national soil on the basis of June 4, 1967 lines, living in peace and security with Israel that is accepted and normalized within the region. To get to do that, you're not going to be able to do that by not addressing the core issue of conflict, which is that you do have Palestinian people who are attached to their land, want to stay on their land. And on the issue of displacement, again, President Trump said that he's driven by humanitarian concern, that he believes you cannot rebuild Gaza while the people of Gaza are there. Our position is that we have a plan that shows that we can do it. And remember, this is not the first time we have such amount of suffering and destruction in Gaza. Last time around, the amount of destruction was 50% of the current destruction, and yet Gaza was rebuilt. So we have a plan that we're going to put on the table that can guarantee that Gaza is rebuilt while its people stay in Gaza. Number two, we'll look at governance, we'll look at security, but beyond that, in order for us to avoid reliving the horrors of October 7 and since October 7. We've got to find peace. The only path to peace is to address the legitimate rights of both parties. As far as displacement into Jordan, I think we've made it very clear. His Majesty at the presser before his talks with the President, he made it very clear he'll only do what's in the right of the people of Jordan and what's in the right of the peoples of the region. And we don't believe that displacement would do that. So just to answer you unequivocally, we have 35% of our population are refugees. We cannot afford anymore. We cannot have Palestinians coming to Jordan. They don't want to come to Jordan. We don't want them to come to Jordan.
And does the President of the United States accept that? Because he's also floated, or some of his officials have floated, just cutting off US aid to Jordan and Egypt. Is that a real threat?
The meeting was a good meeting, and I think at the press conference with His Majesty, he said that he's above speaking of threatening cutting aid, and we appreciate that. Number two, Mark Rubio, the Secretary of State, came out and he said they're willing to look at other plans, other proposals. And what I can say unequivocally is that we are working on an Arab proposal that will show that we can rebuild Gaza without displacing its people, that we can have a plan that will guarantee security and governance. But the last thing I want to say is that what is the benchmark for what is acceptable as a secure and good governance? It is not what the radicals in Israel want. It is what should guarantee peace and security and rights of both peoples.
I'm going to get back to the radicals, because they're radicals obviously on the other side as well, and we'll
absolutely. I mean, we don't want to do it. We want to just create a solution where live and let's live. Palestinians live with dignity and freedom in their state. Israelis live in peace and security as well.
Kaja Kallas, talking about a plan, I was interested to see that President Zelensky has said that after his call with President Trump, which was after the call that Trump had with Putin, he basically said that he doesn't believe the US has a ready-made plan for ending the war. Have you heard anything here from the US Vice President, the Secretary of State, or anybody about a plan? What do you think they're going for? Is it a ceasefire? Is it a peace deal? Is it to try to solve everything all at once? What do you think is on the table?
First, I actually want to also react on the Middle East, because that is also our neighborhood, and our neighbors' problems today are our problems tomorrow. So I think it's very important that we get the governance of Gaza right, because that means that the security of the region, and that also means the rights of both parties there. And we, as European Union, really want to be part of that discussion, because we are the biggest supporters of Palestinian Authority. We are the biggest supporters of UNRWA for the Palestinian refugees. So I think we are also the reasonable and reliable partner, and we should be discussing these issues there. But coming to your question, then yes, we meet with the representatives of United States, and there is a special envoy for Ukraine and Russia nominated by President Trump that I will also meet General Kellogg, and they say that they are in a listening mode, really meeting with the Europeans to put the plan together. And again, with any plan to work, you need the Europeans, you need the Ukrainians, because otherwise, the implementation is on the ground, and there you need the ones who are on the ground.
Just to further that, Vice President J.D. Vance delivered a pretty tough speech, should we say, to Europe, pretty much scolded Europe. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, because I saw it and I heard some reaction from Europeans. Didn't much mention in his speech Ukraine, but did talk a lot about your internal politics, and essentially said that the biggest threat he saw was European internal politics, that you're not listening to your people, and therefore we have this big problem and this big weakness. What's your reaction to that?
When we meet in person, then we have very good and frank discussions. US is our great ally, and they are also saying that they keep or they remain our great ally. When listening to that speech, it seems like they try to pick a fight with us, but we don't want to fight with our friends. We have other threats coming from outside, and I think in domestic politics we have all kinds of issues, and we are settling those ourselves. But we need to work with our allies, with the bigger threats that there are in the world, like we have together with the United States regarding, Russia attacking Ukraine, or, the international order really not functioning, other aggressors in the world having appetite for their neighbors' countries, critical raw materials, the protection of these. I mean, there are so many issues that we can work on and will work on.
I wonder, talking about governance, what High Representative just said, obviously the EU wants to help. Europeans have always tried to help. I touched on the Hamas and that side of the radical. We know the radical and the far-right extremists in Israel. We know what they're saying. Trump has given us a great gift. They're all happy that perhaps there'll be an annexation of Gaza and annexation of the West Bank. But there is a very real question about how do you convince Israel and the Israeli people that a Palestinian state, Smotrich, you heard, said finally this, whatever he said, this nightmare of a Palestinian state has been buried. How do you convince, I know it's not your issue, but how do you think you convince the Israeli population that it doesn't need to be a nightmare? Because Hamas in power again will not make anybody feel happy or secure.
Thank you. First, I just want to reaffirm what Kaja said about the fundamental role Europe play and should play and continues to play in our efforts to bring about peace and security to our region, where one neighborhood, whatever happens in the region, has impact in Europe and vice versa. So we are strong allies and partners, and we'll continue this partnership. On the other issue, look, let's just simplify things. What do Palestinians want? They're human beings like everybody else. They want to live in peace. They want to have schools for their kids. They want to make sure that they have dignity, that they don't have to cross 10 checkpoints to get from point A to point B within their own city. They want peace. And in the context of that peace, we all are willing to come around and create the necessary mechanisms that will ensure security for everybody, for Israelis and Palestinians. So when did we try the two-state solution? When did we give the Palestinians a state and you had problems after that? We got to put things in context. And again, I know since the beginning of the recent round of the conflict, when you try to explain things, it looks like justification. Nobody's justifying anything. But I think in order for us to have solutions, we have to understand the problem. There is a context to that. By the end of the day, you have 5 million Palestinians living in occupied Gaza and West Bank. What are you going to do with these? You cannot get them out of Palestine. They want to stay and they will stay. So let's create a condition, a new reality in which you have a Palestinian state living in peace and security with Israel. And everybody talks about new ideas, and I'm quoting our dear friend, the Qatari Prime Minister here. The two-state solution is a new idea. Has it ever been tried? Did we try it and it failed? Let's create a Palestinian state where Palestinians have dignity, freedom, and the right, like everybody on earth, to live in peace and have aspiration and grow. And that should live in peace and security with Israel. And all of us in the region, since 2002, people forgot something called the Arab Peace Initiative, but it's still on the table.
Saudi initiative, yeah.
All of us are collectively willing to provide security guarantees that will ensure that everybody in the region, Israel and Palestinians, live in peace. Israel is in the Middle East. Does it just want to be in a Middle East that is marked by conflict and tension? Or does it want to be of a Middle East that is living at peace with itself and where everybody can cooperate and work forward? Our proposal is let's create that new Middle East. And the key to that new Middle East is addressing the legitimate rights of Palestinians to freedom and statehood, that they can live in peace and security with Israel, because by the end of the day, Palestinians are there to stay, Israel is there to stay. That's the reality, and we need to figure out a way for both peoples to live in peace so that all of us in the region live in peace.
So a common theme in both Europe and in Israel-Palestine is security guarantees. How do you get past this phase of war and conflict in a way to ensure that it doesn't happen again? So it's been floated that for Ukraine, if this peace proposal or this ceasefire proposal materializes, in fact, even Hegseth said that there needs to be robust security guarantees for Ukraine, minus any chance of it joining NATO. Now, they kind of had to sort of maybe walk that back a little bit, but not much. What do you see as a viable security guarantee along a 1,300-kilometer front line no American boots on the ground, apparently. Does Europe have the wherewithal? Does it need American help, either in the air or with air defenses, with intelligence and the like?
Well, yesterday we were listening also to the defense minister of Ukraine, and actually it was quite painful to hear all the promises that they have been given. And he was referring to, Ukraine had nuclear weapons, and they were persuaded that give up your nuclear weapons, destroy your nuclear weapons, and we will provide you security guarantees so that Russia would never attack you again. And so they did, because they believed in the United States who gave these kind of promises. So he was explaining in a very painful way that, what are the security guarantees that we can really believe in? And I think, what we need to answer is that, the security guarantee that is the strongest and that really works is a NATO membership. And it's actually also the cheapest security guarantee, because it really deters Russia. Now, when it comes to, that this is off the table, that it was said, then we need to answer the questions that what do we really mean? And every 27 countries or whoever is supporting Ukraine needs to answer that question. If you say we give you security guarantees, what do you mean? Are you willing to send your troops on the ground? Are you willing to provide, capabilities and ammunition? And if so, then in what amount, so that it would actually deter or any future wars and conflicts? So, these are the questions that need to be answered by all the supporters or security guarantee givers.
I spoke to one of the European leaders after J.D. Vance's address, who basically reminded me that even back in 2014, when there were meant to be, patrollers of the Minsk process, Russia completely refused to have any. At that time, even OSCE, which it was a member of. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that Vladimir Putin is ready to have some kind of, the kind of ceasefire deal that I've covered all my career, that involves, peacekeepers, that involves all sorts of steps? Does he still want a viable, independent Ukraine?
No. He has been very clear in his goals. Ukraine doesn't exist, and they want to take over the whole of it. They also want to rewrite the security architecture of Europe. So these are all the things that they haven't stepped back from. So, of course, the promises that they have given under Minsk agreements, they haven't kept the promises. They haven't kept their side of the agreement. So my question is, what makes us believe that they do this time? They only do it if they are under pressure, or if they are afraid of something, and that's why we really need to be strong. This is the only thing that they understand.
And just to follow up, you were pretty. You seemed in your public comments pretty distressed over the last few days. You said it could be, any quick fix could be a dirty deal. You talked about appeasement. And obviously all the focus is now from the United States, from the head of NATO, I just had him on the air, that Europe has to stand up. There is no option. Do you believe Europe can? What have you been talking to your colleagues about?
These are two different things. Everybody around the European table, every European country by now understands that we need to do more for our defense. We need to do more for Ukraine. We have done a lot in terms of supporting Ukraine. We are the biggest supporters of Ukraine. We have provided like 134 billion euros, whereas US share is actually smaller. But in terms of our own defense, we need to do more, because we have been in allies with the US, and they have been saying this, and I think it's a valid point. We need to do more. But the other topic on the side is the war that is going on right now, and whether you are offering to the aggressor everything he wants and something on top of it as well. If you do so, then it would invite all the aggressors or would-be aggressors in the world. Okay, that works. I will also go for my neighbors' territories, and that is actually detrimental to the world security.
So, Foreign Minister, do you think what's happening in Europe and the as Madam Kallas says, the potential, basically giving the aggressor what they want. Do you think that when you see that, and you depend, I mean, you like to think that you've got help and support from, but they're in a really bad place. Who's going to help the Palestinians? Is it going to be a rebirth of Arab nationalism? Where are the Arab states when it comes to actually helping the Palestinians? I know that you guys are beleaguered in Jordan and you have millions of refugees, but in general, the rich Arab states, what do you think their responsibility is in the rehabilitation of Gaza and the defense of what you all call for, which is Palestinian independence, statehood, sovereignty, side by side with a secure Israel?
Thank you. I think, first of all, what applies to Europe, what applies to any conflict in the world should apply to the Middle East as well. And I think we should have the same standards. International law should apply to all conflicts, to all people, regardless of where the conflict is and who the people involved in that conflict is. And that's been our really cry over the last year and a half, is that let's apply international law equally. The same standards that apply to Ukraine should apply to Palestine. And that's something, and again, we work very closely with Europe on that over the past year. As what the Arabs are doing for Israel, we're doing everything we possibly for Palestine. We're doing everything we possibly can, but it's not us, the Arabs, that are occupying Palestine. It's not us that are preventing a solution. I mean, look at, again, what we've been saying all through. We want a just peace, that on the basis of the two-state solution, because we really do not see an alternative to that. And if anybody has an alternative that will guarantee peace and security and the rights of all, put it on the table. So we've been working non-stop on that. Again, the Arab Peace Initiative goes back to 2002. Remember, we signed a peace treaty 30 years ago. Even Egypt signed before us. So our call for peace have been genuine, have been solid. But we are of the region. We know the region. And we know that for peace to be real and lasting, people have to accept it. And people are not going to accept a peace that does not fulfill the legitimate right of the Palestinian people. As for Arab Gulf countries, they've been doing a lot. And they contributed to rebuilding of Gaza before. Europe paid a lot of money as well. Everybody's been doing their bit. But again, going forward, do we want to really put billions of dollars into rebuilding of Gaza so that can be destroyed 5 years down the line? That has been the history. Or do we want to say enough? We know what the root cause of conflict is. Let's address it. And you'll find peace partners in every bit of the Arab world. We've been that. There is a partner for peace in the Arab world. Our narrative is we're ready to have a peace that guarantees the security of Israel, that ensures normal ties for it in the context of fulfilling the legitimate rights of Palestinians to freedom and security. What is the Israeli narrative on the other side? Show me. Is there a narrative other than, continuing with the same security-driven approach that has shown that we're just getting into worse and worse places year after year?
Let me just ask you, because in terms of what we just talked about, who patrols, who whatever you want to say, enforces, guarantees a peace, there's lots have been floated about what coalition of forces might do so in Gaza. But Hamas, who are obviously visibly still in charge there, say no, we don't accept any Arab forces, no any other forces. So who do we look for security and guaranteeing a peace?
When was Hamas established? Decades after the conflict started. Mm-hmm. So Hamas is a product of the conflict. A new reality of peace will have a different product that will ensure that peace is maintained. And again, that is what we're trying to say, is that let us create conditions of justice, of peace and security, where people can live in peace and where there is no need for violence and there is no need for conflict. So I think, again, are we able to put a comprehensive plan on the table that shows where we go from here, that guarantees that we don't go back to conflict again? If you give the Palestinian people their rights and freedom and hope, again, like any other people on earth, why would they want to go back to conflict? So I think we really need to look at the root causes of conflict, not to be sort of suffocated in the urgency of the moment, and look broadly and go back over decades of this conflict. Every war has just led to another war. Nobody has tried full comprehensive peace yet. Let's give it a shot and see. And again, in terms of actual security guarantees, all of us in the Arab world, in partnership with our friends in Europe, with our friends in the US, everywhere in the world, we are willing to come up and say, these are the security guarantees that will make sure nobody is subject to threat anymore. And we go forward.
I think you wanted to react to something?
Yeah, I wanted to just say that, of course, the recognition of Israel and their existence is also important, and also the rights of Palestinians on the other side. I think, if you read the history and the establishment of Israel, then, the founders were very clear that you have security security has to be together with justice. So the Palestinians have their rights, and those need to be respected as well. I mean, they have the right to be there, and Israelis are worried about their security, but Palestinians need their, rights of statehood. So I think, we need to balance these things, and that's why European Union is also supporting the two-state solution. Like you say, there is no real alternative to this, but we need to have the two states on more equal basis as well. But that means that also the governance of Gaza is extremely important, because who provides the services to these people? Who provides, a huge issue is the education part. That there would be no radicalization. That is the claim that has been, there. Why, this hatred just fuels more wars, and we have to, see what we can do about this. Looking back is one thing, but looking to the future, the coexistence has to be there.
Can I ask you finally, we're going to go to a question in a moment. We're sitting in Europe, and there is a huge rise of far right, some far left, but nationalism and empowered right now. Is that a threat? Is that a danger? And we've got an election coming up in Germany, in this country, in next week, and it could be a real major turning point.
Any kind of extremism is problematic, and it's usually the people are always against something on the extremes. They're never for something. But in order to build a country, to build a society, you need to be for something. You need to build upon what is already there, and that's why the radicalization or extremes are actually dangerous. So of course we have elections going on, and we need to really address the issues that people are fearing about, and we need to deal with our domestic issues, but not to fuel any more hatred, because that is really dangerous.
I'm going to open to the questions now. The first question is going to Sigrid Kaag. Is that you? Yep. You're the special coordinator for the Middle East peace process, humanitarian construction coordinator for Gaza from the United Nations.
That's correct. One observation and then one question, but it's also a question I could ask myself. It's something we all grapple with. One observation, of course, is the significant political disruptions we've seen now that will be impacting and affecting the way conflict is managed, the way out of the conflict in Ukraine, as well as, of course, the so-called Middle East peace process. So with these huge disruptions, the roles that each country or entity, European Union in this case, could play is potentially lopsided. So my first question would be, how will you exercise the influence, small or large, you may have in order to come back to what would be rules-based outcomes that are legitimate and carried by international law? One observation on Gaza, and I think Ayman knows this very well, we can talk a lot about Gaza given the horrors that have taken place, and I don't know if I'm the only one in this room who goes to Gaza regularly, but it is a horrific dystopian situation of mankind, our fellow human beings, alongside, of course, the hostages that have yet to be returned home, in equal measure. However, the risk is, and it could be the same for Ukraine, I can't compare, that we are so busy with the discussion on the governance and security of Gaza, we lose sight of the real deal, which is West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Palestine risks dropping out of sight permanently, and this is the last moment. Question to both, what can or would you do? Because we need to go beyond the usual statements, they haven't helped us.
Can you take it first, please?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in Gaza, I think I just want to address the humanitarian situation there. Again, our priority today, number one, that the ceasefire holds, that we go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the deal so that we settle that component of it. Number two, the humanitarian catastrophe aid is still not getting in a number. In Jordan, we've conducted probably the second largest operation since the aerial drop humanitarian operation since Berlin into Gaza. We have a route through which we're sending trucks. Israeli measures are not allowing us to send as much aid as we need, and I think Sigrid will testify to that. So we still have a problem of getting aid into Gaza. People are starving. Food is not getting in. Tents are not getting in. Caravans are not getting in. Medicine is not getting in. We have 2 hospitals operating in Gaza, and we're told horror stories of what's happening there. So I think now let's focus on keeping the ceasefire, making sure it holds, and getting sufficient aid into Gaza so that people don't continue to die from starvation, dehydration, and hunger and children. We've got lots of injured in Gaza. They need to be treated. And we've tried to get as many people out as we could, and we couldn't get the right number. And that's why, as much as saying, we are ready to get 2,000 sick people and treat them in cooperation with other countries. It's not new. We've been trying to do that for a long time, but we haven't been able to. So let's keep that reality in check. And again, Sigrid could tell you stories about how disruptive the process of getting aid has been. Beyond that, look, the West Bank is on fire. It is a powder keg that could explode. And if it explodes, I think it's going to drag all of us into further conflict. And that's why we've been working so hard on trying to prevent things from erupting on the West Bank. And the key to that is again, to end unilateral measures that are driving people into despair, settlements, confiscation of land, suffocation of the PA. All these are measures that need to be taken. Ramadan is upon us in a month or so, and we don't want to go into Ramadan with this kind of environment because that could also lead to disruption. So ultimately, I go back to my initial proposition is that we want peace. The path to peace is clear. We are ready to do whatever it takes to bring about that just peace that, again, fulfills the legitimate rights of the Palestinians and addresses Israel's security concern. We're ready. Is the Israeli government ready? That is the question that I think should be put on the table. And again, ideas that are what's called out of the box. What's out of the box? I mean, it has to be just, it has to be fair, it has to make sense, it has to be accepted. And again, we just cannot afford to go back to the status quo ante. There hope needs to be restored. Palestinians have lost hope. We've got to restore hope. We restore hope by offering a political horizon and by addressing the misery of today. And again, for Israelis, thinking 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, where are they going to be? What kind of, region do they want? So they've got also to think long term. And long term for Israel to be able to live in peace and security, as you said, its neighbor needs to live in peace and security.
Well, yes, it is true that all the statements we do and where we stand, but we also, help Palestinians the most. If you think Europeans are the biggest supporters of UNRWA and also aid to Palestinians, I think this is extremely important. But I agree what you said that we are also pushing for the reforms because it's the question who actually provides the services to these people that they trust, that are not, Israelis are worried that there is radicalization when it comes to education and really, the youth and the future, whereas the Palestinians need the services. They actually need, the schools, the water, the sanity, everything that they need. So like you say, that there would be hope in the future. So what we can do is politically support, but also economically support, and we are doing that. But of course, in the end, it has to be the Palestinians and Israelis that also are accepting this kind of arrangement, and that is the thing that we need to work on. It can't be like we agree over their heads, because they really, Israelis need to have the security that they are worried about, and Palestinians need to have the rights there as well. So it is a very complicated issue. It's the mother of all conflicts, and it's but really, if you think about history, the only time where there have been peaceful times is like when there is coexistence, the understanding that we are both here, we're not going anywhere, so we need to coexist and find the rules how we do it.
At this point, I always like to pull out a quote, but I don't have it with me because it's on my phone, but it's the two negotiators during the Oslo peace process, Uri Savir and Ahmad Kurey. It was like, anyway, I'm not going to mess it up, but it was profound. We've got time for one more question. Where are we going to take the question? I'm going to go to the lady there because I saw her first.
Thank you.
No, I couldn't. Exactly.
Good evening. My name is Yael Brado-Bahat. I'm the co-director of Women Wage Peace, an Israeli grassroots movement, working very closely with our Palestinian sister movement, Women of the Sun. We're working daily on the ground to create and maintain bridges between Israelis and Palestinians. Earlier this afternoon, I attended the first part of this event, Prospects of Peace in the Middle East, featuring the Israeli Foreign Minister. And I was wondering, why aren't we having one conversation?
Can I say something to you? I frankly am wondering that too.
So just to say, everyone here knows.
No, it would be really much better to
everyone here knows
Europe,
that
Israel, Palestine, well, we hope to have the Palestinian Prime Minister, but, the Arab countries, yeah.
Exactly.
And the Americans, by the way. We have not been, I'm telling you, we have not been able to get the American administration or other responsibles to these panels.
So I just want to say that everyone here knows that the release of all hostages and the end of the war and the rehabilitation of Gaza will come only through diplomacy. And everyone here knows that security and prosperity and freedom for both nations will come through peace. And everyone knows that for this to succeed, we need also women and civil society involved. So why aren't we having one conversation, and where are the women, where is civil society? And just one last comment, eventually we all know that peace will happen, like it happened in so many conflicts in the world, in history, like it happened with Israel and Egypt, and Israel and Jordan, and the only question is why not begin now, and how many lives will be lost until it begins?
Can I just answer that? And it's a really great intervention. Throughout this war, I've been trying to have people like yourself, grassroots Israelis, grassroots Palestinians, to talk about the peace process from the grassroots up rather than always from top down. And I think that's really a piece that's really, really missing. But we hear that the leaders or the nations, both, are traumatized and that they can't see beyond their immediate trauma right now. But I think you raise an amazing, amazing point, and we try to do this on our show. So I don't know whether you have any comments about this, but especially the women, the Palestinian and Israeli women who've been working for so many years and whose voices are not amplified enough in the right halls of power.
I just want to comment, Christian. I mean, these are the voices that resonate positively. These are the voices that need to dominate. Voices of moderation, voices of accepting the other, voices of recognizing the rights of the other. This is the kind of voices, and again, that's our position in the Arab world. We want to live in peace and security on the basis, in the context of a solution that fulfills the legitimate rights of Palestinians to freedom, dignity, statehood, living side by side Israel that is peaceful and secure as well. That is our proposition. These are the voices that we want to see.
We just need more.
We need to see expressed in the official government voices of Israel.
Or even alongside, to help push along.
Absolutely.
As has happened in many other countries, frankly. The whole Northern Ireland peace process started early with grassroots women who started even in, Liberia and many places of conflict. And I wonder, as a woman, as a ruler, as a former prime minister, etc., there is a huge missing piece, isn't there, of civil society, of grassroots, even when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia thing. I mean, partly is, in Russia, nobody gets a voice, because if they say something other than the party line, they'll get carted off to jail. But, I mean, this is something that may help push leaders towards ending these wars?
Well, when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, the difference is that Russian civilians are not dying. I mean, Russian children and women are not dying. It's soldiers on the ground of other territory, whereas Ukrainian children and women and everybody's dying in their home. So of course we hear their voices, and they want peace. Everybody wants peace, but they also understand that when you're occupied, then it doesn't mean in words you have peace, but it doesn't mean that the human suffering will stop, and that is something that we need to work for.
I don't know how long this session goes, but there was one gentleman behind me. If you could just ask a short question and not make a big speech, that'd be great, because you're going to be the last one.
So I'm Israeli as well. My name is Ilan Baruch. I am in opposition to government. I had a request to you, Ms. Kallas. Next week you are going to meet our minister for the Association Council meeting. Please insist on Article 2. No more violations of human rights on the side of Israel, unconditional. There must be some conditionality between the super privileged status of Israel in Europe and the way Israel is treating the Palestinians. It must be. Thank you.
Pointing out also there's a picture, I assume it's a relative of yours? Your kid? Who's still held hostage?
Yeah.
Well, we hope that he is brought back safe and sound. Hang on, sorry, there was one question being asked here, then you can ask that question. And then we have to end this session. I don't know what he's going to ask you, but you were asked a question behind me.
Yes, we will have an association council with Israel on the 24th of February. So we have an agenda in place. So the first point is situation in Gaza, and the second point is the regional situation. And we are going to talk about other issues that we talk with Israel as well. So there are 27 member states present. It's not usual, but this time it is, because member states really want to have a very frank and open discussion with Israel, and this is the way friends and allies work, so that we are really open and frank with each other, and also raising all the very difficult issues as well.
Could you make it brief?
I'm from New York, so I know how to do quick.
Yeah.
This is my kid. He is one of the 76 hostages, one of the 6 U.S. citizens that are being held hostage. He's also a German citizen. To the foreign minister, if I could ask, can I hear that you agree with the concept that the release of the last hostage is a precondition, and that it makes sense to decouple the Palestinian issue from the release of the hostages? Thank you.
Did you understand? Huh? Okay, in a second.
Yeah, look, I mean, from the way it goes, we've always supported the deal for the exchange deal that will guarantee the release of all. That's a position that we've upheld steadily. We've worked very hard along with our partners to make sure that this deal happens and everybody gets out, and Palestinian prisoners get out, Israelis get out, and we get over this situation. So we're unequivocal in our position about the need for ending this and making sure that we move beyond this catastrophe that has befallen the region since October 7 and move forward to a future where no Palestinian mother and no Israeli fathers will ever worry about their kids or about their children, not just being kidnapped, but going to school and not coming back home and not having a meal on the table. That is our position, and that's why we keep repeating. And the voices that the lady from Israel just expressed are the voices that we need in the Israeli government, so that we can move forward and make sure that neither the Palestinian mother nor the Israeli father ever suffer this reality.
Okay. Yes, if you wouldn't mind just being brief, because the Prime Minister has to leave.
Thank you very much. This is Dalal Erkat from Palestine. Well, on behalf of Palestinian mothers and women, I want to tell everybody here that we empathize with every civilian who loses and who suffers. But at the same time, we would like to see you also calling to ending the Israeli military occupation that has been prolonged for 77 years. As a Palestinian mother, we as Palestinians believed in the two-state solution, and we embarked on a peace process. We believed in negotiations, dialogue, and diplomacy. Yet, 35 years later, what do we witness on the ground? More entrenched Israeli military occupation, more apartheid on our grounds, more extrajudicial killings on daily basis, more arbitrary detention. And let me remind you that 11,500 Palestinians are behind Israeli bars. Those also have the right to return home. Those also have the right to dignity, liberation, statehood, and freedom. So if we are serious as civilized human beings that we want to engage and we want to live in peace together, let's start by tackling the root cause of the instability in the region, which is by ending the Israeli military occupation, by defining the border of the State of Israel, and by recognizing the Palestinian state, and by respecting equally international law and application on Palestinians and Israelis alike.
I think the point is, let's start by talking to each other.